Part 2 is towards GE16 and beyond. What are the stakes? Okay. After about 3 years in power, is the Madani government and PM Anwar on track to achieve a developed nation status for Malaysia by 2030 and other goals? When is the expiry date of the present parliament? If they go to the maximum date, it will automatically dissolve on 19th December 2027. This paves the way for an election within 60 days. So that means the latest date for GE16 would be 17th February 2028, which means that PMX and the Madani government has approximately 2 more years to go. But GE16 can be called anytime before its expiry date. I think that's an important point to take note of. Now, what is the situation of the Madani government and the Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim? What do the rating agencies say about their status, their standing among the rakyat? Now, there are a number of survey centers, one of which is Ilham and the other is Merdeka Center. Now, I quote one survey from Ilham Center, which was in August 2023 after the election in the 6 states. Now, according to the Ilham Survey Center, Anwar received an overall approval rate of 42% among respondents from the 6 states they recently held their state elections. The highest support came from the Chinese Malaysians, 88%, Indians, 81%, other ethnic groups, 75%. Very high. But among the Malay community, the support for Madani and for Anwar was at 24%, very low. Now, what about surveys by Merdeka Center? Now, Anwar started with an approval rating of 68% in early 2023. That is after the formation of the new government. But this dropped to 50% at his 1-year mark, largely driven by concerns over the economy and how it affected livelihoods. But by December 2024, Anwar's approval rating increased to 54%, up from 50% a year earlier. Those satisfied with the Madani government also rose to 51%, up from 46% previously. Now, what about the current situation? And by current situation, I mean May 2025, because that was the last survey by Merdeka Center. We don't have any latest survey after May. Now, for the May survey, Merdeka Center carried out between 12th and 23rd May, 12th May and 23rd May in 2025 among 1,208 registered voters. Now, the results of the survey showed that Anwar has a 55% approval rating from voters at the midterm or the midpoint of his administration. Why is that? Now, according to the Merdeka Center, Anwar's relatively stable leadership and perceived economic improvements have contributed to a more favorable outlook among Malaysians. Now, Channel News Asia, which is a news channel from Singapore, based in Singapore, commenting on the results of the Merdeka Center survey, said that Anwar has generally maintained a positive approval rating since he came to power in November 2022. After the dip to 43% in June 2024, his ratings have climbed up to 54% by December 2024 and 55% by May 2025. But there's a caveat from the Channel News Asia. The higher approval ratings for Anwar and Madani government surprised some analysts. They feel that the key to maintaining strong public support for the second half of the administration term is managing the cost of living and also the proper and effective communication of their policies. And the Channel News Asia raised a relevant question. Will this approval rating last for the next 2 years before the GE16? Now, the question now is, we don't have any data on the rating after May 2025. No new survey has been done since June till now, but there are many major things that have taken place since then on the domestic front and also internationally. Maybe from some of these events, we can make some inferences, but we cannot be too definitive about the positive impacts. Now, we have, of course, the ASEAN Summit in Kuala Lumpur because of Malaysia's chairmanship at the end of May, and the second summit will take place at the end of October 2025 with the presence of world leaders in Kuala Lumpur. And of course, there's a big controversy now about President Trump attending the KL summit as well. Now, there is a movement now to demand the government to disinvite Donald Trump as a facilitator for the genocide in Gaza. That's one. So it is quite a mixed situation there. On the international stage, as I mentioned earlier on, Malaysia has been doing fairly well. Participation in BRICS, Shanghai Security Cooperation, presentation at the UN and all that. And there is growing confidence in Malaysia among international investors and Malaysia as hub for ASEAN. And there's strong support for Palestine, especially Gaza. It's a good political mileage, but the mileage is a double-edged sword. It can cut both ways. On the domestic front, the impacts of the financial assistance, for example, 100 ringgit for every citizen above the age of 18, its impact has not been assessed, but from anecdotes and all that, you can say that the impacts have been positive. And of course, the subsidy for petrol, RON 95, which is now pegged at 1 ringgit and 99 cents. Now, so is there a feel-good move emerging? Maybe, but we have to wait for the goodies in the budget, in the coming budget this Friday. Will this budget on Friday be an election budget? We don't know. We have to wait till October the 10th. But the point I want to say here is that though we don't have data to show based on the polling surveys, based on polls by the polling centers, but there have been a number of indicators of programs and actions taken by the government that may have a positive impact upon the people, upon the voters. But we don't know how long this will last. We have to see how things go after this. Now, despite all this, many formidable challenges remain for the government, especially the cost of living and the quality of life, the bridging of gaps between rich and poor, between the gaps between regions, especially Sabah and Sarawak, between the east and west coast of Peninsular Malaysia, and of course the global volatility, the US tariffs, and the demand or the need for Malaysia to diversify its markets and sources of investment. On the domestic front, the rise and expansion of the angry class, the precariat, which I spoke about in early last year to Monsoon, and the precariat, this angry class can easily be manipulated. But a positive development is that Parliament has passed the gig workers bill in September this year, which covers about 1.2 million gig workers. And this bill, which has not yet been gazetted into law, is regarded as a landmark and unprecedented. Second challenge is the question of young voters. Only 18. There's lack of political education. Their voting behavior is easily influenced by parents or populist politicians, and more attention has to be given to this issue. There is, of course, the trust deficit and cynicism, which is fairly widespread. And a number of irresponsible politicians keep raising the political temperature by using ethnic and religious issues, and the question of fake news, slander, and with the social media playing a divisive role, the role of cyber troopers, influencers, and all that, all creating a big headache in terms of managing the social peace.